In 1872, a photograph was taken in London that captured something impossible. A 12-year-old girl sits in a Victorian chair, staring directly at the camera with eyes that seem to carry the weight of invisible worlds. But surrounding her in the image are dozens of transparent figures, people who had been dead for decades. This is the story of Emily Crawford, the child medium who shocked Victorian society and whose mysterious disappearance remains unsolved to this day. To understand Emily's extraordinary story, you need to picture Victorian London in 1872. Death was everywhere. Child mortality was devastating. Cholera, tuberculosis, and typhoid fever could wipe out entire families in days. The death of loved ones wasn't some distant possibility, it was a constant reality haunting every Victorian home. This created perfect conditions for the spiritualist movement. What had started in America with the Fox sisters in 1848 crossed the Atlantic and conquered British society. Scientists, writers, even royalty attended seances, desperately seeking comfort for their losses. London became the epicenter of paranormal activity. Houses in Bloomsbury and Kensington transformed into salons where mediums promised to connect the living with their deceased loved ones. Queen Victoria herself, devastated by Prince Albert's death in 1861, regularly consulted mediums. Emily Crawford was born in a modest house in Whitechapel. Yes, the same neighborhood that would later become infamous for Jack the Ripper. Daughter of a dock worker and seamstress, Emily seemed completely ordinary until age 8. November morning, 1868. Emily was playing alone in the small yard behind her house when her parents heard her talking animatedly with someone. When her mother Rose came to check, she found Emily apparently alone but continuing an elaborate conversation. "Who are you talking to, dear?" Rose asked, looking around the empty yard. "With the lady in the blue dress," Emily replied innocently. "She said she used to live here before us." Rose felt ice run down her spine. The house had previously belonged to Beatrice Sterling, a widow who died there 3 years earlier. Beatrice was known for always wearing blue-gray dresses, something Emily couldn't possibly have known. In the following days, Emily's conversations with invisible presences became frequent and detailed. She described with precision people who had died years before her birth, relating intimate details about their lives that left neighbors both disturbed and fascinated. Emily's father Albert, initially skeptical and worried about his daughter's sanity, decided to test her claims. He took Emily to Old St. Bartholomew Cemetery where many former neighborhood residents were buried. Albert walked with Emily through narrow pathways, carefully observing her behavior. For minutes nothing happened. Emily played innocently, collecting fallen leaves. Then suddenly she stopped in front of a particularly old tombstone. Her expression changed completely, eyes becoming distant. "Mr. Frederick wants me to say something," Emily murmured, her voice taking on a strange tone, more mature than normal. Albert read the inscription, "Frederick Ashworth 1801 to 1845. Devoted father and beloved husband." "He says his wife Catherine never found the letters he hid behind the loose brick in the fireplace," Emily continued with that strange voice. "He wants her to know he always loved her, even when they fought about money." Albert's legs trembled. Frederick Ashworth had been his neighbor in childhood. He remembered Catherine Ashworth, a bitter woman who died years after her husband, always complaining Frederick had been cold and distant. Determined to verify this information, Albert sought out Catherine's surviving relatives. To his horror and fascination, he discovered that after Catherine's death in 1851, they had indeed found love letters hidden exactly where Emily described, behind a loose brick in the old Ashworth fireplace. News of Emily's gift spread through London like wildfire. In an era of sensationalist newspapers, the story of a medium girl from Whitechapel soon reached elegant Mayfair salons. The first high society member to seek Emily out was Lady Isabella Fairfax, an aristocratic widow who'd lost her only son in a riding accident. Lady Fairfax had consulted various renowned mediums without success, spending fortunes on unsatisfactory sessions. The contrast was striking. Lady Fairfax descended from her elegant carriage into muddy, malodorous East End streets, her silk and jewels clashing with surrounding poverty. Emily, then 9, received her in the Crawford small living room wearing a simple patched dress, brown hair and simple braids. No elaborate rituals, special candles, or mystical atmosphere, just a child sitting in a wooden chair, looking calmly at one of London's richest women. "I can try to speak with your son, madam," Emily said naturally, as if offering tea. In the minutes that followed, Emily described with impossible detail Oliver Fairfax's personality. She mentioned his passion for butterflies, his secret fear of storms, even a small scar on his right knee from a childhood fall. Details never shared publicly. Even more disturbing, Emily, speaking in Oliver's voice, mentioned a diary hidden under loose floorboards in his room. A diary Lady Fairfax was completely unaware of, but which was found exactly where Emily indicated. Emily's case soon attracted London's scientific community, particularly those studying psychic phenomena. Dr. Reginald Pembroke, a respected physician and Royal Society member, decided to personally investigate. In March 1869, Dr. Pembroke conducted controlled experiments with Emily. He brought personal objects from deceased people, items Emily had never seen or could have prior knowledge of. The results were disturbing. When presented with a pocket watch from a Crimean War soldier, Emily immediately began describing battle scenes with visceral detail. She spoke about cutting cold, the smell of gunpowder and blood, even mentioned specific names of regiment companions. Dr. Pembroke later verified this through military records, discovering every detail was correct, including names of soldiers who'd served in the same battalion but whose names were never published publicly. The physician noticed physical changes in Emily during sessions. Her body temperature dropped to dangerously low levels. Her pupils dilated abnormally. Her breathing became almost imperceptible for long periods. Most intriguing was what Dr. Pembroke called temporal automatic writing. During trances, Emily wrote in completely different calligraphic styles, using terms and expressions from eras before her existence. With Emily's growing notoriety, entrepreneurs approached the Crawfords glimpsing profit opportunities. In 1870, when Emily was 10, her family was persuaded to organize public sessions in rented central London halls. These sessions attracted crowds. People from all social classes paid considerable sums to witness the girl medium's phenomena. Journalists, scientists, skeptics, and desperate mourners filled halls, creating electric atmospheres of expectation and tension. The sessions followed a pattern. Emily sat in a simple chair surrounded by candles that she claimed helped spirits manifest. No elaborate tricks or equipment, just a girl and her apparent ability to communicate with the dead. During a particularly memorable October 1870 session, Emily contacted the spirit of Sir Nathaniel Harrington, an influential politician who died in a mysterious carriage accident 6 months prior. Through Emily, Sir Nathaniel revealed government corruption details that later proved true, causing a political scandal that shook Westminster. But reactions weren't all positive. The Anglican Church publicly condemned Emily's activities as demonic practices corrupting a child's innocence. Sensationalist newspapers suggested Emily was fraud elaborately orchestrated by her family. Skepticism peaked when famous magician, the Great Mysterioso, publicly declared he could replicate Emily's phenomena using illusion tricks. He challenged her to public demonstration, promising to expose her fraudulent techniques. The confrontation was scheduled for December 1871 at London's Royal Opera House. The event generated unprecedented coverage, with European newspapers sending correspondents to cover what was dubbed the trial of the century. The audience included royalty, renowned scientists, religious leaders, and declared skeptics. Rules were established by independent commission. Both participants would face same controlled conditions without external equipment or assistance. The Great Mysterioso, real name Vincent Sterling, was known for extraordinary skills in cold reading, illusion, and psychological manipulation. He'd exposed various fraudulent mediums and was confident Emily would be another. Emily was tested first. When presented with a simple wedding ring, she immediately entered her characteristic trance. Her voice changed, becoming deeper with slight Scottish accent. "Helena McGrath was my name," she said, speaking as another person. "I died of tuberculosis in 1863 in Edinburgh. My husband Douglas never knew about the daughter I was carrying when I departed." The audience fell silent. The commission verified records and confirmed the ring belonged to Helena McGrath, who died exactly when Emily said. Medical records later confirmed Helena was pregnant when she died, but Douglas McGrath had never been informed. When Sterling's turn came, he used impressive cold reading techniques and logical deduction, getting some general details right. However, his attempts were clearly based on psychological techniques and educated guesses, without Emily's specific precision. The confrontation continued for 2 hours with increasingly rigorous tests. Emily consistently demonstrated abilities defying rational explanation, while Sterling clearly depended on conventional illusion methods. The most dramatic moment came when Emily was presented with a child's locket. Without hesitation, she began crying real tears. Her voice transformed into an even younger girl's. "Mommy, why don't you come get me?" Emily whispered with a voice that chilled everyone present. "It's so cold here under the ground. I'm afraid of the dark." The audience was visibly shaken. Mothers began sobbing, recognizing universal despair of a lost child. Vincent Sterling seemed genuinely disturbed, unable to replicate or explain what he witnessed. The commission revealed the locket belonged to Lucy Ashford, a 6-year-old who drowned in the Thames 3 years earlier. Her parents, present in the audience, confirmed through tears that Emily had perfectly captured their deceased daughter's personality. Sterling publicly admitted defeat, declaring some forces in the universe are beyond human understanding and replication. This marked the height of Emily's fame, establishing her as the most recognized medium of her era. By early 1872, Emily had become an international celebrity. Letters arrived daily from across Europe requesting consultations. It was in this context that the idea arose to create permanent photographic record of Emily during a session. Photography was still expensive technology requiring long exposure times and heavy equipment, making it impossible to capture Emily during dynamic trances. Dr. Pembroke suggested a different approach. Photograph her at rest, but when she's conscious of spiritual presence around her. The chosen photographer was Cornelius Hartwell, a respected artist specializing in London high society portraits. Known for capturing not just physical appearance but inner essence of subjects. The session was scheduled for March afternoon in 1872 at Hartwell's Piccadilly studio. Emily, then 12, had developed premature maturity due to public life pressures. Her eyes, once bright with childish innocence, now carried weight no child should know. In days before the session, Emily reported strange dreams. She spoke about shadows moving at vision's edges and voices whispering her name at night. Rose Crawford, increasingly concerned about her daughter's mental well-being, considered canceling. But Emily insisted. "They want to be seen, Mama," she said with disturbing certainty. "Photography is their way of proving they exist." March 23, 1872 dawned with dense fog covering London, creating supernatural atmosphere that seemed appropriate for what was coming. Emily arrived at Hartwell's studio with her parents and Dr. Pembroke. Hartwell's studio was on the 3rd floor of an elegant Victorian building. Tall windows allowed abundant natural light, essential for long exposure times. The environment was carefully prepared, simple chair before neutral background, surrounded by reflectors for uniform lighting. Emily entered wearing a simple dark dress chosen to contrast with her pale skin. Her hair was combed back, completely revealing her young face marked by experiences beyond her age. Hartwell began preparing his massive camera equipment mounted on robust tripod. Photographic plates were prepared with meticulous care. A single image would require approximately 3 minutes exposure, during which Emily would need to remain completely motionless. "There's something strange in the air today," Hartwell murmured while adjusting lenses. "I feel like we're being watched." Dr. Pembroke, equipped with thermometers and scientific instruments, began recording environmental conditions. Studio temperature was 18 degrees Celsius when Emily entered, but began dropping rapidly as soon as she sat in the prepared chair. Emily assumed position with unnatural calm. Her eyes, fixed directly on camera lens, seemed to see through equipment, as if looking at something infinitely distant. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, but everyone noticed her breathing gradually became slower and deeper. "They are here," Emily whispered without visibly moving her lips. All of them came for the photograph. Hartwell positioned himself behind camera, hand over lens cap, preparing to begin 3-minute exposure. The studio fell into absolute silence. Even street noises below seemed mysteriously ceased. "Now," said Hartwell, removing the lens cap. At the exact moment exposure began, several extraordinary phenomena occurred simultaneously. Dr. Pembroke recorded sudden 8 degrees Celsius temperature drop. Candles providing additional light began flickering violently despite total absence of air currents. Emily remained perfectly still, but her expression began changing subtly. Her eyes, initially looking directly at camera, seemed to follow invisible movements around the studio. Rose Crawford felt chill realizing Emily's eyes occasionally focused on points in empty air. Even more disturbing was Dr. Pembroke's scientific instrument's behavior. His chronometer, working perfectly moments before, began oscillating erratically. The compass spun wildly, as if multiple invisible forces competed for attention. During the second minute, Hartwell noticed something that made him question his sanity. Through his camera viewfinder, he swore he could see shadows moving slowly around Emily, vague human forms seemingly positioning themselves within the photograph's frame. "Are you seeing this?" whispered Albert Crawford, pointing to space immediately behind Emily. Everyone looked but saw only empty air. However, there was undeniable sensation of presence, as if the studio was suddenly full of invisible people waiting patiently to be included in the historic image. Emily remained entranced throughout exposure, but at the end of the 3rd minute she spoke with a voice not her own, older, with slight Irish accent no one had heard before. "The truth will be revealed in the image," said the voice through Emily. "What eyes cannot see, light will preserve forever." Hartwell replaced lens cap, ending exposure. Emily immediately came out of trance, blinking confusedly as if awakening from deep dream. Studio temperature began returning to normal and Dr. Pembroke's instruments stabilized. Developing the photograph would require several hours in darkroom. Hartwell insisted on developing personally without assistance. He disappeared into his photographic laboratory, leaving the Crawford family and Dr. Pembroke waiting anxiously. While waiting, Dr. Pembroke compiled scientific observations. Anomalies recorded during session were inexplicable by era's scientific standards. Temperature drop had been sudden and localized. Thermometers and other building parts recorded no changes. Magnetic effects seemed to emanate directly from space around Emily. Approximately 4 hours later, Hartwell emerged from his dark room with expression of deep disturbance. In trembling hands he carried the developed photographic plate, still wet from development chemicals. "I don't know how to explain this," stammered Hartwell, voice barely above whisper. "I checked the process 3 times. There are no technical errors, but what you're going to see." He positioned the photograph against a window, allowing natural light to illuminate the image. What everyone saw left them in stunned silence. Emily was clearly visible in the center, exactly as expected. Her young face looked directly at observer with hypnotic intensity. But around her, partially transparent but undeniably present, were human figures. They weren't just shadows or photographic plate defects. They were distinct faces, men, women, children of various ages, all dressed in clothing from previous eras. Some seemed standing directly behind Emily. Others floated as if gravity didn't apply to them. Dr. Pembroke examined the image with magnifying glass, searching for manipulation signs or technical defects. He found none. The spectral figures were perfectly integrated into the image, their transparencies varying but features clearly discernible. Even more disturbing, some figures in the photograph were recognizable. Rose Crawford immediately identified Beatrice Sterling, the former house owner, positioned directly behind Emily's right shoulder. Albert recognized Frederick Ashworth, the cemetery man who'd communicated through Emily years before. In days following the photograph's revelation, Hartwell's studio became center of intense scientific activity. Photography experts were summoned to examine the image, searching for fraud evidence or technical manipulation. Professor Marcus Whitfield from the Royal Academy of Sciences conducted the most rigorous investigation. He examined not only the final photograph but also the original glass plate, chemicals used in development, and even Hartwell's camera. "From a technical standpoint," reported Professor Whitfield, "this image is genuine. There are no signs of double exposure, negative overlay, or any known manipulation form. The spectral figures appear recorded simultaneously with the main image during original exposure." Other experts reached similar conclusions but offered alternative theories. Some suggested reflections from strategically positioned windows or mirrors. This was quickly discarded when detailed studio reconstruction revealed no reflective surface that could create such effects. The photograph's success and notoriety had devastating effect on Emily's mental health. The 12-year-old, already overwhelmed by public life pressures, began showing worrying psychological deterioration signs. Emily reported constant nightmares where photograph figures visited her during sleep. She described long, disturbing conversations with spirits supposedly demanding her constant attention. During days, she frequently became distracted, apparently listening to voices no one else could perceive. Rose Crawford noticed her daughter was rapidly losing weight and developing dark circles around her eyes. Emily seemed aging prematurely, as if constant spiritual world contact was draining her youthful vitality. "They never leave me alone," Emily confessed to Dr. Pembroke during medical consultation. "Even when I'm awake, they're always whispering, always asking me to transmit their messages. I just wanted to be a normal child." Dr. Pembroke became deeply concerned about Emily's condition. Medical examinations revealed inexplicable physical symptoms. Her body temperature had become chronically low. Her pulse was irregular. She showed severe anemia signs despite adequate diet. Even more alarming was development of what Dr. Pembroke classified as dissociative episodes. Emily frequently lost consciousness of her own identity for periods, believing herself to be one of the deceased people with whom she supposedly communicated. During these episodes, she spoke languages she claimed never to have learned and demonstrated historical knowledge impossible for a child her age. On September 15, 1872 morning, Rose Crawford discovered Emily's bed was empty. No signs of struggle or break-in. Windows remained locked from inside. Front door hadn't been opened during night. Emily had simply disappeared. The search mobilized all of Victorian London. Metropolitan Police organized massive operations, investigating every alley, every abandoned building. Posters with her image were distributed citywide, substantial reward offered for information. Dr. Pembroke conducted his own investigation, interviewing everyone who'd contacted Emily in weeks prior to disappearance. He discovered Emily had repeatedly mentioned a trip she needed to make and people waiting for her in a distant place. Even more intriguing were witness reports claiming to have seen Emily on her disappearance night. A flower seller near London Bridge said she'd seen a girl matching Emily's description walking toward the Thames around midnight, apparently following figures the witness couldn't see clearly. A night guard at Highgate Cemetery reported observing a child among tombstones that same night. When he approached to investigate, he found only small footprints in wet earth that disappeared abruptly near an old mausoleum. Most disturbing aspect of witness reports was their consistency on one point. All described Emily as seeming not to be alone, as if accompanied by invisible presences guiding her through nocturnal city. In decades following Emily's disappearance, numerous theories were proposed. Each reflected beliefs and scientific knowledge of its era, but none provided completely satisfactory explanation. Official police theory suggested Emily suffered complete mental breakdown and fled home, possibly perishing somewhere in vast Victorian London. While plausible, this failed to explain total absence of physical evidence and inexplicable nature of disappearance from locked house. Paranormal investigators proposed Emily had been called by the spiritual world, that her extraordinary connection with dead had eventually resulted in her own transition to beyond. Supporters pointed to her comments about a trip and waiting people as evidence Emily had consciously accepted Spirit's invitation. Dr. Pembroke, who devoted his remaining life to studying Emily's case, developed his own complex theory. He believed Emily had become a conduit between dimensions and that prolonged exposure to supernatural energies had gradually altered her physical composition, allowing her to exist simultaneously in multiple realities. More than 150 years after that March 1872 afternoon, Emily Crawford's photograph continues challenging our understanding of reality. The image remains a perfect enigma, scientifically inexplicable but undeniably real. Questions raised by Emily's case transcend the paranormal and touch fundamental questions about human existence nature. If consciousness can survive physical death, if parallel reality dimensions can occasionally intersect with ours, if some people are born with capabilities defying known physics laws, all these possibilities were suggested by one Victorian girl's extraordinary gift. Emily Crawford's final fate remains mystery. She may have found peace in some spiritual realm beyond human comprehension, or succumbed to her unique life's impossible pressures. Perhaps she still exists in some form, continuing to serve as bridge between worlds most of us can never perceive. What remains incontestable is her brief life's lasting impact on human understanding of mysteries surrounding us. In an era when science was rapidly expanding human knowledge limits, Emily Crawford reminded us some existence aspects may forever remain beyond rational explanation. Her photograph serves as visual portal to a time when the world was full of unexplored possibilities, when the line between science and magic was even more tenuous than today. It invites us to consider that even in our modern advanced technology world, there may still be phenomena challenging our most fundamental reality understanding. Emily Crawford's story reminds us our world still holds deep secrets waiting discovery. Every old image, every historical account may contain clues about mysteries we don't yet fully understand. If you were fascinated by this journey through Victorian history's dark archives, there's much more to explore. Stories of inexplicable phenomena, photographs defying logic, cases continuing to intrigue researchers more than a century later. Each week we dive into new forgotten archives, new disturbing photographs, new cases challenging everything we think we know about reality.